understand losing yourself, but that was... I don't like it. I don't like it. I feel like death reading this. What? It's kind of like Romanticize Your Life, but Witchcraft Edition. Hi, my name's Sylvia, and in today's video I'll be reading 3 sad girl books. So there can be many different ways of interpreting the sad girl trope or aesthetic. I guess it also really just comes down to whether we're talking about books specifically or, you know, the aesthetic as a whole. And not to brag, but I have quite the rich background with the sad girl aesthetic. I was definitely a Tumblr girly back in the day. I mean, I still kind of am, not gonna lie. But specifically around, you know, 2014 or between 2014 and 2016, I think that's when the sad girl aesthetic was really at its peak, at least on Tumblr. And I was definitely a part of that. I was one of those people that kept reblogging like milk and honey photos, all the poems, you know, the sad girl poems, and all those posts about depression and struggling with your inner demons, and of course as well as the aesthetic of like the girl wearing ripped tights and combat boots. I think you know what I'm talking about. If you're into the aesthetic, you probably know what I'm talking about, but anyway, in a way you could kind of look at the sad girl from 2014 as like the new and improved emo girl from the 2010s, like early 2010s and or early 2000s, I guess. Sorry, late 2000s, early 2010s, maybe. I definitely dipped my feet into that as well. And by that I just mean that my brother used to call me emo, so that counts. No, but I mean, I definitely had like the bangs sort of covering my eyes, and you know, I went through a phase where I was wearing all black even though I was like 11 years old, so anyway. However, when it comes to the actual criteria, I guess, for what makes a sad girl book such, I would say they usually follow a specific formula. So we're usually following a depressed main character who's typically a woman. It doesn't have to be, and she also doesn't have to be depressed. They may just be at a point in their life where something traumatic takes place, or just traumatic in the sense of life altering in one way or another. But anyway, the point is they're usually struggling with something, and that struggle, whether it be, you know, an actual mental disorder or just something else, that's usually the catalyst for their life kind of spiraling out of control. In general, we kind of see them struggling in different facets of their life, and typically that leads up to the climax of the story, which is when they will hit rock bottom, basically. And from there we then get to the ending of the book, which usually is a resolution. So we will usually see them either dealing with their mental disorders by going to therapy, or in general just kind of like, you know, they will resolve their struggles in one way or another. That's the typical trajectory in the sad girl books. Obviously, like I said, it doesn't have to follow this specific formula. There can be a lot of variations and, you know, whatever. But that's the main criteria I kind of look for in general, because a sad girl book is not just any general sad book. They also tend to be the kinds of books that I refer to as boring, in the sense that there's nothing much happening in the book, so it's not like action-packed or anything like that. And they also tend to be the kinds of books that a lot of people would call plotless, and that's, in my opinion, actually part of the reason why a lot of people don't like these kinds of books, you know, other than the fact that they're kind of depressing. Also, in general, and again, this isn't always the case, but oftentimes the main protagonist we're following tends to be quite unlikable, I guess, quite insufferable at times, and it's probably quite frustrating to read for a lot of people. Personally, I love reading about characters like that. So it's me of the future. I forgot to introduce the books that I'll be reading. My dog is making a lot of noise, so I have to hold her hostage. I'll be reading My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh, Girls Against God by Janie Ball, and The Days of Abandonment by Elena Ferrante. I've started my year of rest and relaxation like a few days ago, and I'm only 27 pages in, but I really enjoyed it. I kept stopping every 2 seconds to kind of like take some notes and write something down. I also started writing every time like it made me laugh or like chuckle. This is something that like I didn't know it was gonna be like this going into it, because the way I heard of this book being talked about, it was like this rich white girl who is just insufferable, and you know, she has rich white girl problems and she's very unrelatable, and you know, kind of like that. And that is true. However, I feel like she's also just really funny. I don't know, she's just maybe not funny but humorous. She's kind of brutally honest. Okay, so she's talking to her friend Reba. She says, "We're all alone, Reba," I told her. It was true. I was. She was. This was the maximum comfort I could offer. And then, you know, there's some more, and then she says, "I wish there was someone to hold me, you know. Is that pathetic?" That's what her friend says. And then the protagonist replies, "You're needy," I said. Sounds frustrating. What? Her friend says, and then there's Ken. "I just can't stand it. I'd rather kill myself than be all alone," she said. At least you have options. I don't know. I don't know if other people would find that funny, but I personally find that really humorous. Like, she's just kind of, yeah, she's just kind of blunt. Like, she's really blunt and she doesn't really care. But I think that's how you're supposed to take it. I think it's meant to be read in a humorous kind of way, and like, yes, she is struggling with mental disorders, and you can clearly see that. And actually, so far I've already noticed certain ways of thinking, like her way of thinking. I find it kind of relatable. For example, I trusted that everything was going to work out fine as long as I could sleep all day. Now, I don't necessarily relate to the sleep all day, but that kind of mentality of like not really doing anything to make things better, but just kind of thinking and maybe even hoping that things are just gonna fall into place without actually trying to change things. Like, I feel like that's a pretty normal mentality to have when you're depressed. Okay, I stopped filming for a while, so I don't know where I left off and what I was saying, but in general, I just find her to be really funny, at least so far. I don't know, maybe it's because like I have a weird sense of humor. I think I tend to really like dark humor in general, but also, you know, sarcasm and just like, I don't know, I think I find certain situations quite funny, like the situation as a whole and the way that the person is coping with it. So I don't know, maybe that's why I think it's funny and a lot of people don't. But at least so far, the first 27 pages, like I was so hooked. I was really hooked. I thought it was funny. I thought it was interesting. I love the writing. Like, I really love the writing style. I've seen several comments of people saying like, oh, she's just a wasp and like she has wasp problems and whatnot. It's like, I mean, I'm not denying that, because yeah, that is true, but I don't know, I think there's more to it than that. And I think I've seen people saying how like it's kind of pointless, and I don't know, like so far I'm really enjoying it, so I don't really see it that way, but let's wait and see, I suppose. But so far it's giving me 5-star vibes, which I'm really happy with, because this is a 5-star prediction for me, so I'm excited. I'm excited to continue. So it's been a few days since my previous clip. I didn't really have any updates to make, to be honest, but yesterday I finished reading it and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It could possibly be one of my all-time favorite books now, maybe, but look at all those tabs. I loved the writing style. I loved how Ottessa Moshfegh was able to show how the protagonist is still coping and dealing with something traumatic that happened to her. I don't want to go into details because it could be a spoiler, but she's clearly struggling with something. She's struggling with coping with something that happened to her, and that's really the reason why she's depressed in the first place. And I think she was really able to show that in a subtle way, because it's never explicitly mentioned, but you can clearly see it through the writing. You know, you can clearly see it in the way that the protagonist refers to certain people, and in general it just really comes through, and I really love that. And I really love the depression rap as well. I think it was really well done, and I personally found it really relatable in many ways. I mean, the most obvious example would be her wanting to sleep all the time and wanting to escape her life through sleep. I mean, I think that's like one way of dealing with depression. It's obviously not the only way. Personally, I'm more of an insomniac, so I don't necessarily relate to that, but I relate to the idea of wanting, like, trying to find something to distract yourself and to, you know, not make you think about all your thoughts, really. I also found it relatable how she was kind of numb to feelings as well. I think that is something that can happen, maybe not to everybody, but I thought it was an interesting portrayal. And I know a lot of people think that she's mean and that she, you know, I mean, she is apathetic, so you can't deny that, but I think that it was done on purpose. Like, I think that is related to being depressed. I think some people do experience that, maybe not everybody, but I know I have, so I don't know. I found that relatable as well. She was definitely insensitive though. Like she's definitely insensitive. She's brutally honest. She doesn't care that she's hurting people's feelings. She says it the way she thinks it, and I found her so entertaining though as a whole that I really didn't think she was unlikable at all. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't think I'd want her as a friend, but reading from her perspective was really interesting though, and I found it really entertaining, although I do tend to like unlikable characters anyway, so you know. The exploration of her character as a whole was also really well done. She's really good at making observations, you know, with other people and even with herself. She knows how to think logically, and you see that many times throughout the book, but you really see the hypocrisy coming through when it comes to that. So like she's really quick to point out other people's flaws and, you know, other people's weaknesses and what they're doing and why they're doing it, stuff like that, which some people might think she's projecting. I don't fully agree with that, but I digress. But then she also does the same thing in her own life, and she has her own ways of coping with her life and dealing with her life, and she's clearly making the same mistakes over and over again. And I think she is aware of that, but she doesn't care. For example, the fact that she always goes back to her loser of a boyfriend, trash of a boyfriend. But again, I feel like that was another aspect of her personality that was linked to her main problem, which was her relationship with her parents. And you can really see how the relationship she had with her parents, especially with her mom, I definitely saw that reflected in her relationship with her boyfriend. I found some similarities between the two, specifically how her mom really didn't treat her with respect and her boyfriend didn't either, but I like the parallels in that as well, and how she clearly seeks out people that just aren't good for her, you know. She has like all these toxic relationships with every person in her life, and it is very reflective of the relationship with her own family members. So I thought that was interesting, and it was again another nuance added onto the character description. I just really admire Ottessa Moshfegh's way of showing the character and making her feel like a real person. So I just really appreciated that. I did love the humor in the book, and I think Ottessa Moshfegh, like she's really witty, and like she knows what she's doing, in my opinion. The only criticism I have, I suppose, would be the ending of the book. The ending felt very rushed. You know, it didn't really make sense. Like, why was that rushed? We could have spent more time on that. Also, I don't know how realistic it is for her. I don't want to talk about the ending since it could be a spoiler, but I felt like it wasn't super realistic. Things just kind of unfolded in a very simple way, and I don't know if that's actually something that could happen. I don't know. I'm trying to be vague because I don't want to spoil it, but if you've read it, hopefully you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't know. I would have preferred a different kind of ending, I guess. However, I feel like as a whole, despite the rushed ending, I still love the experience overall. I like the reading experience. I thought it was entertaining. I thought, you know, like I said, I thought it was funny. I also found it really relatable. 5 out of 5 stars. Love it. Yesterday, I also started reading Girls Against God by Janie Ball. I think that's how you say her name. I actually listened to it on audiobook whilst also I was kind of like trying to follow along. And I have found some, you know, some quotes that I liked, some moments that I liked. However, this is very different from what I was expecting. And the writing style is also different from what I'm used to. And I don't know how to feel about it. I still don't know how to feel about it. I love the title, but I don't know if I'm loving the execution as much. I'm still kind of torn about it. I think things are gonna pick up soon. I'm 48 pages into the book, so hopefully things will pick up soon, and then, you know, once more action starts happening, maybe I'll like it a bit more. But so far, I don't know how to feel about it because it's very personal, right? It feels very personal. It feels like it's the perspective of this girl who's Norwegian, and it's her experience as a Norwegian girl growing up in this small town. And by the way, I live in Norway. I'm not Norwegian, but I understand what she's saying, and I understand the monotony of Norwegian life because nothing much happens here, to be honest. But she's also very specific with like her hatred for Christianity, and I mean, relatable, but I'm just kidding. Or am I? I don't know. The way she talks about her hatred for Christianity, it's very much from the perspective of like a Norwegian girl who was kind of forced to live in that way. I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't know. It's just, it feels oddly specific, and I don't know if it's something that I care that much about, because she's also talking about her experience, you know, loving for example, black metal, and you know, I listen to heavy metal and stuff like that, but I don't know, I didn't grow up listening to that, so maybe that's also why I'm just not as into it. I don't know, it just feels like a very specific experience, and I feel like if you don't relate, it's maybe not as interesting to read about. I don't want to say that it's not interesting, but I think that if I had been Norwegian, if I'd had a similar experience, then maybe I would have liked it a bit more. But I don't know. I might change my mind as the book unfolds, but right now it's feeling very like this is her experience and I don't really care that much for it. So hopefully I'll like it a bit more as the story unfolds. But yeah, so far I'm like 2 stars maybe. 3 stars, because like I said, I found some good quotes that I liked, but I feel like so far it's the kind of book that I'll forget about in a couple of days, to be honest. So not really my vibe right now, which it's really sad because I thought this was gonna be a 5-star, so kind of disappointed right now, but hopefully things can only get better from here. I might talk a bit more about it later on if I have any updates. Otherwise, I'll see you later. Why is this girl so emo? Like, this is too much even for me. I can't deal with her anymore. I'm not really enjoying this book, to be honest. I should probably have known from the title, but there's so much about Christianity in here, and we get it. We get it. Like, I understand not liking religions because I kind of feel the same way, but like, I don't know, going on and on and on about like, you're this child of Satan or whatever, it's like, okay, like, what are you trying to say? Like, what's your point? I don't know if I'm just not in the mood for this or if this is just too emo and too, like, I don't know, it's just so dramatic, and I'm like, ugh, I don't want to hear it. I just don't want to hear it. And I can't be bothered to continue with it, but I don't know. I want to like it. I really want to like it, but this is not it for me. I don't know. I haven't made a lot of progress, so we'll see. I'm on page 75. I might just like listen to it on audiobook without stopping, because like I was kind of stopping to, you know, highlight some good quotes and whatnot, but honestly it's like there may be some good quotes, but overall I feel like death reading this. Am I exaggerating? Maybe. Do I care? No. So there's that. Part of the reason why I may not be enjoying it is that the protagonist is strongly opinionated. She really, really hates Christianity, and you know, given her upbringing, whatever, I understand, but I feel like in general it's harder for me to get behind main characters that are really strongly opinionated, just because I'm someone who, like, I try to look at things from different perspectives. I'm always playing devil's advocate, so to me, just reading something like so with so much feeling and like so much passion in their viewpoint, I guess, I don't know, it's just like, I get it, but this is too much for me. It just feels like a very dichotomous way of thinking, and I don't like reading from perspectives like that, to be honest. Like, sometimes I can get behind them, but with this one it's like, I don't know, the language, like the way she expresses herself, like I like it. It's really poetic, but also it's borderline annoying and kind of pretentious, maybe. That's how I feel. That's just my opinion. Maybe I'm too simple for this book. Maybe this is just a book for intellectuals and I'm not on that level. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not getting it, but I don't like it. I don't like it. It's just, she's truly insufferable, but I digress. I don't know. I'm gonna try my best to continue. I really don't want to DNF it. I'm not even halfway through, so I might as well continue. I don't know, because I also don't want to waste my time with this if I'm not enjoying it. So it's been, I think, a couple of days since I finished reading Girls Against God by Janie Ball. Okay, so in my previous clip I was talking about how I thought more plot was gonna happen after the 50-page mark-ish, and I was wrong. Nothing much really happened, to be honest. I don't really read synopses of books. Like, I will usually maybe read it once and then, you know, the book sounds interesting to me, so I put it on my TBR, but then by the time I actually get to read that book, I've already forgotten what it's about, and I like it that way. With this one, yeah, I don't know why, I kind of thought that maybe because it's a trio of friends who are also witches, I thought that maybe, you know, there was gonna be a plot surrounding them and them doing something related to witchcraft, and that's not really what the book was about. It's mostly about just how much the protagonist hates Christianity and her relationship with Christianity, I guess, and how witchcraft is like the antithesis of Christianity. I mean, she really loves witchcraft, and she kind of starts talking about how even just everyday tasks or, you know, just normal things that you do on a day-to-day basis, how they can be witchcraft too. I thought that was kind of cool. Like, it's kind of like Romanticize Your Life but witchcraft edition. Yeah, basically she opposes Christianity completely because of her experience growing up. I think it's kind of the same sentiment along the lines of Down with the Patriarchy but with religion. And I think at its root it's really because of the system that Christianity created in terms of, like, you know, societal norms and stuff like that, and she's against all of that, and she feels like the only way that you can kind of get rid of all of that is by opposing it completely. And so she kind of sees witchcraft as a way to go against it. You know, it is, like I said, it's like the antithesis of Christianity in her opinion, and I kind of see her point. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if it was a quote or like maybe I saw it in a TV show, I don't know, but I remember someone mentioning how if you want things to change, like if you want society to change, you can just try to change it from the inside. You know, it's kind of like when people talk about capitalism, it's basically the idea of like, yeah, you're fighting against capitalism but you're still living in a capitalist society, so you can't really do much. You know, you can talk about how you hate it, but you're still a part of it. So basically the idea of like, if you actually want things to change, you have to completely eradicate, in a way, what already exists. And that's kind of how I saw her talking about it. Like the way that she talks about Christianity, it's like, we need to get rid of it in order for things to change. I think it's mostly focusing on Christianity because that's the main religion in her country of origin, which is Norway. And I get it. I also grew up Christian. Like, that's always been my point of reference, I guess. But obviously it's not the only religion, and I think that if she wanted things to change, like, I don't know, it's just a lot more complicated than that, obviously, but I digress. It's an interesting discussion to have, I think, like the idea of how religions really help the patriarchy and how they, in a way, support a lot of societal norms that are damaging for a lot of people. So it's interesting, but the way she went about it was really about like how much she hates it and how she sees witchcraft as a solution to everything. And I don't know, as someone who's atheist, once again, like that to me was just kind of like rubbish, to be honest. No offense. I know there's like Wiccans and I know there's people that, you know, believe in that, and good for you, to each their own. The way I see it is I don't really care what people are up to as long as you're not hurting other people. But yeah, it was an interesting conversation in general, but the execution just wasn't really it for me. In theory, I should have liked this book because it's kind of like magical realism, surrealism, and like this, actually I think it's on the back, it says Hval is a Hval, I don't know how to say her name, but she's a master of quiet horror and wonder. And it's true, there's a lot of elements that are like horror, and there's a lot of gore being discussed, I guess like blood specifically, and I did like that somewhat, but at the same time a lot of what was being discussed was just so confusing to me. Like, I just was confused. I was like, what the fuck am I even reading? Like, it's one of those experiences, you know, it felt like a fever dream. This was just weird. I wouldn't say I disliked it, but I didn't like it either. It's funny because a lot of weird things happen in the book, a lot of bizarre situations. Somehow I found everything boring and I just couldn't wait to be done with the book, and I really wanted to DNF it so many times, but then I was like, no, just push through, just wait until the end. I think I was expecting some more action in general, and that's not really what this is about. There's this mixture of like surrealism and or magical realism, and it's like you don't even know what's happening and what isn't happening. And I usually love books like that, but once again this just didn't really work for me, and I think maybe because it was very much related to witchcraft, and again I don't really care. Like, I just don't care about that. So I don't know, it was just a bizarre reading experience, to be honest, and I don't even know who I would recommend this to because it feels like a niche book. You know, it's like there's a niche group of people that would probably like this, but most people probably wouldn't, in my opinion. I think if you really love witchcraft and if you love magical realism and or surrealism, I think you might like it. You know, the whole point of this video was to read sad girl books, and like obviously I thought that it was gonna be like that, but I don't think this really fits the bill, to be honest. Or maybe to a certain extent, but usually when I think sad girl books, I think, you know, depressed main character, you know, and along those lines. And the character in here, she's not struggling mentally, it's more about her struggle with society, and that's an interesting take. It's an interesting discussion, but when it comes to religion and societal issues and stuff like that, I prefer philosophical books, you know, books that are gonna show several perspectives of the same topic, and, you know, several takes on one topic. And I don't know, like, it just wasn't for me. I felt annoyed most of the time. Not because I was annoyed at what she was saying, but I just felt annoyed in general, and I felt kind of bored as well, which is weird because, again, it's a really weird book. In theory, I feel like I should have been intrigued by what was happening, but I did not feel intrigued whatsoever. I couldn't wait for it to be over, and I think part of the reason is that I also really didn't like the narrator, unfortunately. Her voice, I don't know, there was something about it that just, it kind of irked me. I feel mean saying that, but it's my opinion, okay? Her voice kind of irked me, and it kind of ruined the experience. Maybe if I had read it physically, it would have been better. But also I talked about how the writing just kind of seems a bit pretentious at times, and I don't know if I fully agree with that statement, and I know I said it, so it's like, shouldn't I agree with it? But I feel like it's true at times. Like, at times I felt like she just loved the sound of her own voice, but then I also feel like it's more along the lines of a creative person who has spent a lot of time thinking about these things, and the way she tries to describe societal issues, or, you know, just stuff in general, it's really interesting, and it's a really unique way of describing things. And I appreciated that. Like, I do think that's a creative way of expressing yourself, but at times it kind of missed the mark for me. At times I was just like, what are you even talking about? And I don't know, like, maybe I'm too stupid, or maybe it was just confusing for no actual reason. Like, what's the point? I'm sure a lot of people would enjoy that kind of writing style that's a bit more creative and more flowery, if you will, but I don't know if I fully like that. And I wouldn't say that this is necessarily a flowery writing style, but she just talks a lot. I think in general there was something about her writing style that, on the one hand, it's kind of intriguing, but mostly I just found it really annoying, and a lot of it was also kind of repetitive, especially with the flashbacks. I felt like so many of them were the same thing, and it was her talking about black metal over and over again, and I just did not care. You don't need to relate to characters to like a book, but I feel like with this one, I kind of mentioned it in a previous clip as well, like, it feels like if I'd had a similar experience, I would have enjoyed it more because it would have resonated with me more, but because I haven't had those experiences, it's just like, it's oddly specific, and I just didn't care, to be honest. And also just the whole book is about her loving witchcraft and talking about witchcraft and how it's the, you know, like I said, like the opposite of Christianity, and how we need witchcraft and everybody's basically a witch or something. I don't even know anymore, but once again, no thanks. So it just didn't work for me as a whole. This is like 1-star vibes. I feel like the reading experience as a whole, it was a 1-star vibe, but then I think I'll give it a 2 stars just because some of the things she talked about did kind of resonate with me, and I did find some quotes that I liked. She had some good points, and it was an interesting book to read, generally speaking, but I would have been fine not reading this as well. And with the audiobook as well, like I mentioned, I did not like the narrator, and I found the audiobook on script, and I was like, okay, like, this is gonna speed things up. I'm gonna be able to read it in like 2 days, maybe 1 day, and then I'll move on to the third and final book for this video. And then basically the opposite happened, where because I hated the narration, I did not want to continue with the book. I thought it was so boring. I was dreading reading it, to be honest, and not gonna lie, at times I wasn't even fully paying attention because I just couldn't care less. So I don't know, like, maybe it was a bad decision on my part to continue with the audiobook when clearly I did not enjoy it. And it was like like 4 hours long audiobook on 2 times speed. Like, usually I can do that in 1 day or 2 days, but it took me so long. So that's a no. That's a hard pass for me. Tired, so my brain isn't fully connected right now, but a couple of days ago I also started reading The Days of Abandonment by Erna Ferrante. I actually gave a bit of an update yesterday because I read the first 56 pages, but unfortunately the clip got deleted. Anyway, it doesn't matter much because I didn't really have much to say anyway, because, to be honest, since the book is really just about the main protagonist Olga struggling mentally, emotionally as a result of her divorce, well, of her separation, it's very much just about that. It's about her mental state and how it affects her actions and how it affects her daily life, how she's coping with the fallout of her marriage, basically. One thing that I did mention in my update was actually how it was giving me 5-star vibes. Like I mentioned, I read the 56 pages in one go, and that's because I really didn't want to stop, and I loved it so much to the point where I actually ended up buying another Elena Ferrante book. I already had the Napolitan novels, which I haven't read yet, but yeah, I just love the writing style so much, and this is my second book by her. I've read The Lying Life of Adults, and I also loved that one. So anyway, I love the writing style, and that's something that I was talking about yesterday, and how it was giving me 5-star vibes, mostly because of that and because of the way that she describes the main character's feelings and her emotions, her thoughts, and that's something that I love about this book. By the way, I finished it. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I love how visceral it is. She really doesn't shy away from showing really ugly emotions, really ugly thoughts, ugly actions, and I really love that. I love that. I feel like you don't really read that many books that, you know, where the author isn't scared to really go there and show how much something negative happening in your life can really affect you mentally, and therefore also, you know, your behaviors and just your way of being, like your whole personality can change as a result of one, you know, traumatic event. And it's really shown in this book, and I think it's shown wonderfully. And it's kind of funny because I gave this 4.5 stars, so it's not a full 5 stars. I loved it, but I think part of the reason why I can't give it a full 5 star is because of something that happens in the book that, again, like, it's showing what I just talked about, like the ugly behaviors, and the protagonist really changes as a person because of the fact that her husband wants to leave her, or, you know, he does leave her, and she kind of loses herself, and because of that she reacts in really exaggerated ways, and she can become quite aggressive. And I don't want to go too much into it, but I feel like I will say one thing: if you're sensitive about like animal cruelty in any way, you know, I didn't know that going into it, but yeah, there is a little bit of that. It's not like, it's not anything gory, or, you know, it's not anything extreme, but personally it made me really uncomfortable. And like, I'm the kind of person that cries when when animals, you know, are hurt or die in books or movies. So yeah, like, that's mainly the reason why it's not a full 5 star, because it was just too much for me to be honest, and it made me really hate the protagonist. And after that, like, I just couldn't see her the same way anymore, because like, to me it's like, I understand losing yourself, but that was no, animal cruelty is just something like it's too much for me. So anyway, just bear that in mind if you're gonna read it. Again, it's not a big part of the, well, I was gonna say it's not a big part of the book, but it actually kind of is, because it shows how she's changed as a person as well. So anyway, I digress. Again, like, Elena Ferrante, she's not scared of going there. She's not scared of showing how ugly someone can be, you know, as a person, not physically, how ugly someone can be as a result of drastic life changes. I just really appreciated it. But once again, I was really hoping this was gonna be a 5 star, and I mean, obviously I really love it. Like, I you know, 4.5 is almost a 5 star, so I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I don't know, like, I really want to read an Elena Ferrante book that just really resonates with me fully, you know, where like the whole way through I'm like, yep, 5 star vibes, absolutely adore it, you know, because like, I love her writing style so much, but I can't seem to fall in love completely with her books. Like, this is just a second book of hers that I read, but you know, she basically has the perfect formula for me in terms of like the kinds of books that I like, so I need to find the one for me. But yeah, I really loved it though, so I'm not complaining. This is a good reminder of why I love sad girl books so much, because once again, like, they don't really shy away from showing how ugly a person can be, how ugly a person can become. They don't shy away from negative emotions. I definitely think this might be controversial in some aspects, just because of, well, specifically I'm thinking of, other than the animal abuse or potential animal abuse. Well, I mean, to me it is abuse, but you know, anyway. Other than the animal cruelty, I think another controversial aspect of the book is her way of talking about her husband's mistress, basically, because he cheats on her. I don't think that's a spoiler, so I'm gonna say it. Personally, I think it's justified, because we're reading the book from her perspective, and obviously she's really upset with her husband, so I do think it's realistic. Like, I think a lot of people would think that way. Not that I necessarily agree, because at the end of the day, she wasn't the one in the relationship, so I don't think it's fair to call her names and not your husband. But at the same time, also, this book originally came out in 2002, so again, I think it's a product of its time in that sense. But also, once again, I do think it's realistic, because I think many people would think that way about the other woman. So yeah, something else I want to mention is that if you are someone who is really sensitive when it comes to children, it might make you a bit uncomfortable maybe, but it's not too bad, I guess. I mostly get affected by like animals not being treated right. So it's funny because like now that I'm thinking back on it, it's like when it was the dog that was being treated unfairly, I was like, how could she? And then literally with the kids, I'm like, oh yeah, she's a bad parent. Anyway, I mean, she was trying her best, but again, like, I just love that we get to see a woman kind of spiraling and becoming, honestly, in a way, like a hideous monster. Like, the way she was thinking and the way she was behaving, I was literally like, damn, like, that's a lot. But I love it. I kind of mentioned it when I was talking about my year of rest and relaxation, but sometimes when you're in that destructive mood, you just want to hurt people. And that's exactly what she was doing as well. And like, I don't know, even just the way that she's like more rude to people, which to me, I mean, it is rudeness, I guess, but it's also just brutal honesty. Like when you're just being brutally honest, or when you're tired of all the pretense and the social politeness and the sugar coating. Like, I don't know, I find that really relatable, and I really enjoy reading characters like that, because I mean, I think a part of me does resonate with that kind of behavior, I guess. I mean, not that I really act like that most of the time, but you know, every once in a while you start thinking that way, but then you kind of hold yourself back. And I just love seeing, in a way, unhinged characters, like characters just not caring at all and just kind of saying what they're thinking. And yeah, anyway, that's another reason why I love sad girl books. But anyway, yeah, 4.5 out of 5 stars. Really loved it. If you like sad girl books, I think you would like it. It's been over a week since I've been done reading the books and filming the previous clips. I don't know why it's taking me so long to film an outro, but here we go. So I've already talked about the ratings for each book, but just to reiterate, 5 stars, 4.5 stars, 2 stars. Although my year of rest and relaxation is obviously my favorite out of the 3, I actually think that in terms of recommendation, if you were to ask me which of the 3 would I recommend, one book that I think most people would enjoy is actually The Days of Abandonment, because there's a lot more in here compared to the other books, in my opinion. There's a lot more themes being explored, like womanhood, motherhood, childhood, parent-child relationships in general, sexuality, marriage. There's a lot of good stuff in the book. There's a lot of, I think, relatable thoughts and experiences in the book. I think a lot of people would see themselves in some way in the protagonist, and obviously not completely maybe, but you know, a lot of discussions in here are relevant for a lot of people, in my opinion. Having said that, it can be a bit disturbing at times, and I think that if you're a mother or like a parent in general, or if you love animals like dogs, I kind of mentioned it in my previous clip, but yeah, it can be a bit disturbing, it can be a bit much at times, but I think that in general people would enjoy this the most out of the 3. Also, in terms of the writing style, I feel like it's not necessarily more accessible, but I think the writing style is just so good, and I think a lot more people would appreciate it compared to the other 2. And also there's just a lot more happening overall, I think, and what is happening isn't as weird as something like Girls Against God, or as boring as my year of rest and relaxation. Yeah, I think most people would probably enjoy The Days of Abandonment, and I think that's the one that I would recommend for most people. Overall though, I had a lot of fun reading these books. Not this one, just these 2. I had a lot of fun with these, and I don't know, I love the sad girl book trope. I don't even know if it would be considered a trope, but you know, I just love sad girl books in general. And I actually, after reading these 3, I read another book that would be considered a sad girl book, which is Luster by Melanie, and I loved it. 5 stars, so good. Anyway, I'm definitely gonna continue reading books like these, and yeah, hopefully I'll find some recommendations online as well, or in general. But anyway, if you have recommendations, let me know. If you have read any of these books and enjoyed them, or even if you hated them, let me know. I'm so bad at outros, I don't know what to do. But yeah, peace.